MEP Julia Reda, what is piracy filtering?
The European Commission has made a proposal in the copyright reform that all online platforms where users can upload a lot of content should have in place a filter that can automatically detect copyrighted content and remove it. And I think this is a fantasy. Such technology does not exist. So it would put an obligation on companies, but also on websites that are not companies, such as Wikipedia, to detect something that is actually an extremely difficult problem for courts to solve. So the question, what kind of content is protected by copyright, is a lot more difficult than the European Commission makes it out to be. Today, there are some companies that have filters that detect music videos or music recordings, but this is a very small part of copyrighted content and a very simple part. Everything can be protected by copyright. For example, the translation of a text or a building can be protected by copyright. And if you photograph it from different angles, a filter would have to be able to detect that. And this is not possible with the technology that we have today. So I think it's a really bad idea to put such an obligation on online platforms, especially also because the European Court of Justice has said in the past that such a general filtering obligation violates the fundamental rights of privacy and of freedom of expression.
Do you think platforms such as YouTube need privacy filtering?
YouTube already has a filter, but it only detects very specific types of content, particularly music recordings. And the problem that the music industry is facing with YouTube is that even though the rights holders have the right to require music to be taken down, quite often they would prefer it to keep it on the platform. And YouTube has given the rights holders the possibility to get a small share of the advertising revenue that is generated in return for keeping the content online. And rights holders, of course, would like to get more money from YouTube for this. But I don't think that the proposal from the European Commission is actually going to achieve this goal, because YouTube would be one of the very few companies who already comply with this obligation. They already have the filter, at least for certain types of content, and nothing in the legislation would actually require YouTube to pay the rights holders more. So at the moment, it's a question of the bargaining power between the music industry and YouTube that leads the rights holders to getting less money than they would like. But simply requiring all the platforms to act in the same way as YouTube is actually going to make the situation worse, because only a very large company like YouTube can actually afford to put these filters in place.
How piracy filtering can affect startups?
Startups can have very large amounts of user-uploaded content on their platforms, even when they are not yet at a stage where they make profit. So especially in the area of internet startups, quite often the startups are interesting because they have gathered a large community around a specific topic. So for example, MuseScore is an EU startup from Belgium that allows people to share sheet music. So it's a very specific kind of content, but there are of course lots and lots of musicians in Europe who make their own compositions and who would like to have an easy way of exchanging this information. So they have large amounts of content, they have millions of sheet music uploaded, but they are not a large company, they do not make a lot of money, and it's extremely difficult to actually see whether a sheet music is of a protected type of music for which the author does not have a license, or whether it was the author themselves who uploaded their own composition to this website. And I don't think there is a technological way of determining this.
You said you believe Mr. Arimon is trying to sabotage the process.
Well, we had a vote on the question of filters in the IMCO committee where Mr. Arimont was representing the EPP group, and he made a proposal that would essentially make it impossible for startups to develop and would also, I believe, violate the Charter of Fundamental Rights because it would require those filters to be put in place. However, in the IMCO committee, in the end, we did not follow this approach by Mr. Arimont, and instead we adopted a text that clearly states that whatever voluntary agreements these companies make with rights holders, they cannot be forced to put in place a general monitoring filter that monitors everything that users upload, and on contrary, they have to respect the fundamental rights.